South Tail Shore. And here they are listed: East University, Maine to Device, MPO campus, El Paseo, University to Lowman, area bounded by Durazno, Montana, Pecos, and Calle de Sueños, East Lowman, West Amador, Picacho, not surprising again, North Solano, North Valley, and also Tail Shore, Dripping Springs, and West Hadley, and 2 fatalities on the milepost I-10, pretty close together, you know, a milepost 53 to 54. Now, not surprisingly, a lot of these crashes, injuries, and fatalities occur near low-income areas. You can see, well, essentially the MPO is a low-income area around the area of Lowman, near low-income area, near low-income housing and motels on Picacho and other locations too. So most of that's because many people of the low income cannot be, well, now fare is zero free for road runners, so that's not a barrier. But a lot of times it's low income that have to work because they have no alternative but to walk or bike. And this is consistent with national data too. And it's issue of equity as well. We look at this. I did something different this time. I actually weighted them by the class A, B, C, unhurt, and all fatalities. When you have fatalities, it jumps it up. You notice that this is what we did to corridors a couple of years ago as well, without the cost. It's a weight. You notice 2 things jump up, Lowman and El Paseo. No surprises there. That's because several fatalities and serious injury of both those corridors. Others come down ranking, different rankings in that situation. Those you think could come out high don't come out high as all when you do it like that, you know? So you have really 2 stages, and you have other, like 3 or 4 classes, and that's why I divide in classes. All these corridors are significant, but the 2 Lowman and El Paseo just jump out tremendously. Here I put it in graphic format. I'm a geographer, so I always, you know, makes me think, well, I think it makes the point much better. Here you have Lowman, East Lowman, you have El Paseo, and then what I did, I added another corridor I didn't before in the other exam, and Missouri pops up well as well. Others, like you would think that at West Amador would be more, it's not. Others like Hadley, et cetera, they're in the 3rd or 4th levels. So if you look at, because they're so dominant, yeah, another level, just like Tail Shore, North and South Tail Shore, ranked fairly high too, and also North Solano, also because of fatalities, also ranks above the Lowman and El Paseo corridors. Now, these are some findings I found too, not surprisingly, but it's good to summarize them, because as I go through research, I start to think about what are the commonalities, right? High pedestrian activities like MSU, El Paseo, West Lowman, lower income areas, North Solano, West Picacho, near public services, like on West Amador, along interstates, near major bus routes, El Paseo, and say Lowman as well, McDonald's that stop there, along interstates, near major bus routes, sorry, near parks, neighborhoods, like the Durazno area, I call it just a short. And now, we look at this, and how do we evaluate it? This is be scale this too. It could be for a larger area, to look at all projects, or to look at particular project in a particular corridor, et cetera. The same type of format. I didn't bring this up. This came from an FHWA primer on lighting. It's very good. There's a link, and you just Google it, and you'll find it too. And it will tell you all about how to plan for lighting as well. So what you do, look at assessment of lighting needs, look at selection of design criteria, equipment selection, determination of control strategies, and design and verification. So here are some criteria. You know, They're the usual suspects, they're AADT, the volume is very important. There's a real, something, it's not surprising, but a lot of this is in lower volumes because, so like after 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., the volumes go down. So actually, even though there's lower volume, those are less vulnerable still out there. It doesn't have a major effect on this too. So things like looking at intersections, geometric, looking at mid-block crossings, et cetera, it's all there. But you have to select the criteria you want to do, right? Nothing's perfect. Yeah. So what you do, you look at pedestrian considerations, determine the type of facility or how many pedestrians in the area, you have mid-block crossings, et cetera. Determine the luminary criteria because that's beyond my scope. The actual lighting engineers look at that, look at the vertical versus horizontal lumens, the amount of coverage, and also the spread of lighting too. So there actually is another FHWA document, lighting safety, and that's another, this preceding the lighting primer too. Now, you can do combination of different strategies. One would be reduce speed, of course, additional roadway lighting, protected crossings with special concern for senior citizens and wheelchairs and youth, develop pedestrian action plan, develop the design guides, and site-specific planning. Now, when you look at control strategies, not all lighting systems are the same. They may turn on and off at dusk. They may be gradual, may activated by a person going through the area. Spacing, you can look at adjustment made for special activity, et cetera, like at inter-school football games. So it's really a variable. It's not like a one-size-fit-all. And you can have adapted lighting to account for light pollution as well. Now, once you got lighting has been established, and it could be anywhere, it could be several corridors, it could be one corridor, et cetera. You need to look at, excuse me, bringing a lighting designer and setting up the software and photograph analysis so you can get the spacing correct, the time is correct, et cetera. So it's not just put up the lights wherever you want to, and that's it. It's really quite complex, and you have an expert to do this too as well. Now here's an example. We have several. I can think Missouri is almost like this without the park, but Missouri has a school, it has a bus stop, and it has intersections too. But when you look at the lighting schema, one thing that Michael Bartholomew pointed out, that the light should be behind the bus stop to sort of create a lighting for the pedestrian with bus patron, and also make sure the crossings, the lighting as well, and at corners as well. Now, what you do in a lighting plan, you go and make sure the optimal location of lighting and it's spread evenly, and the lumens are correct as well. Now, conclusions. Lighting is one of the prominent factors in pedestrian crashes. We proved our own data over 5 years. It's nationally proven as well. And improvements in lighting and related improvements, better striping, better signal timing at intersections, and putting mid-blocks can improve safety. And this proven, by statistics, and most occur along major corridors where speed may be a factor. There also, this is not the end of this. I hope this is going to lead to something else, I hope. More detailed studies are necessary to delineate priorities and costs. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, I had a question about where you talked about dark lighted versus dark not lighted. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about like an intersection it's dark and there is no light versus an intersection with light, or what does that terminology mean? That
depends on the officer. It could be just a present of light, could be dark lighted. So dark not lighted would be the absence of any kind of lighting at all. So the lighting may be actually poor in certain situations, but they're just recording what they say in the universal crash report.
Okay, so this crash happened near a light post versus not near a light post.
It may not make any difference at all, I think. I mean, it is, It is notable because obviously with no light, you have no, it's a desperate situation, but with the lighting, with the light post being there, there may not be adequate lighting. It may be not behind the pedestrian, et cetera. So just having lighting doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the cause, or the lighting is not the cause of the crash as well, or the fatality too.
Okay. And in your list of all the corridors and whatnot, Espina or Idaho wasn't mentioned, and I remember some crashes happening there, and I think that's probably the data lag that we talk about.
Mr. Chair, I think that's right. I think the Spina did come later than this report because they're 2020 data. And I looked at, and I could miss things too, but Espina almost had one crash. I don't think it was fatality in the data I have, but it goes up to 2020. So that would have increased the corridor weighting too. So these changed. It's almost like the beaver or whatever, the animal, and you were, yeah, whack-a-mole. Yeah, because every time, every year it changes. You may have one corridor that will go up and down. Like North Main is not a big concern because of some of the concerns. So, and Valley also has gone down in pedestrian crashes as well. So because one year Espina may be high, and that was kind of I believe kind of a freak accident. A freak situation to a certain degree, but it is noteworthy because Espina has little lighting. So even though they have one thing, the crashes go up and down. It's not proactive, it's reactive. And obviously when you have lack of lighting, it's predictive or highly likely that crash will occur in those places too. So I think really, if we're going this comprehensive, you look at each quarter and look at the appropriate lighting and see if it's suitable for that. And then, of course, resources are limited. We don't have all the money in the world. Which one is the most heavily frequent with traffic, with pedestrians? So a lot, like Amador didn't pop up. We know there's a lot of pedestrian activity there. El Paseo did. But there's a lot of, Albertsons and Walgreens particularly. There's a bus stop that's most frequently a bus stop. And also Lowland popped up too. Someone said, oh, I knew that. But others that may pop up as being dangerous, we don't know. So you have to look at, you can't predict to a certain degree, we can, but I don't have the statistical data to do that, to predict where the most likely place will be for crashes too.
Okay. So recently, last Monday, I think it was, there was a work session at City Council, and some consultants presented, and part of their presentation on pedestrian safety had to do with lighting. Right. And the numbers that they presented really confused me because they were going like way low numbers for dark crashes. So, and your numbers show way high, 3 times as much approximately. And I tend to believe your numbers more. Do you know anything about that, where their numbers may have come from?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was confused as well because I didn't know where they got the numbers, but my numbers are correct as far as I know. And they're also consistent with national figures too. National figure like 7% for nighttime conditions, and ours are 80. So comparably, the means are the same. So I don't know where they came with those figures. I would like to know. But I mean, there's no doubt about it that they did 20%, I think, as I recall, and it's much higher. So I could be wrong, but as far as I'm concerned, this data is correct.
Okay. Any committee members have questions?
Mr. Chair, go ahead. Mr. Chair, Jim Wilcox for the record. One of the things that we discovered on another committee I was on is that when the engineers implemented and built the control boxes for the lighting, they inadvertently built a fairly high control box, which was on the approaching side on the approach of the cars. And so what we discovered happened was it blocked the motorist view of somebody standing at a crosswalk or an intersection. And so just as a precaution, I'm sure your people are on this if this gets approved, but that can be an inadvertent, unintended consequence of of building up such a system. So we recommended and they implemented putting it on the opposite side away from the approach for the cars going away from that particular crosswalk. Once they've crossed it, they'd be on the right side, so to speak. And just a caution for that.
Go ahead.
Jess Waller, BPAC Citizens Representative for Las Cruces. Can you please define Dr. McAdams' pedestrian crash?
Mr. Waller, Mr. Chair, Mr. Waller, a pedestrian crash will be any, I know where you're coming from too. A pedestrian crash would not be like a person walking and tripping on a sidewalk.
Yeah.
A pedestrian crash is defined in the Universal Crash as a vehicle hitting a pedestrian as a crash. So it was a tripping or a bicycle. You could have a bicycle, pedestrian crash too, or other things like that. That would not considered a crash per
Okay,
se.
it's automobile with a pedestrian.
Exactly.
It's not an automobile with a bicycle.
No, I could be, I don't think it's generally defined, strictly defined as a motor vehicle hitting a pedestrian as a crash. Now, that'd be no injuries, that's why you different the crash from fatalities. And it doesn't, sometimes they're not reported as well.
Okay.
So this data has some fuzziness about it. In reality, it's probably much higher. It's probably pedestrian, maybe a person hit a pedestrian, they said, oh, I'm okay. That would not be reported.
Right. Another question, just very briefly. You mentioned certain hotspots, problematic areas. Telshore, Melendrez, Loman. Is that between Missouri and, what is it, up there by the Hilton? And there's another place you identified along El Paseo. It just skips the question.
Okay.
Are you planning on lighting improvements in specific places or all like at a bus stop? Or are there or lighting improvements for every pedestrian crosswalk along Telshore, along El Paseo? Or is it like close to the Loman, like you mentioned, at the bus stop?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Waller, I really can't address that because this really needs further study. So I can't really, what we're at now is just identifying places that are problematic, that have crashed as a way to study further. But we did an intersection study before. It's really detailed as far as left turns, right turns, intersections at Walton and Loman. And I think one thing that should remind us, very detailed to do that, and particularly lighting. I'm not a lighting engineer, so it'd have to be much more detailed and much more costly when we think so too. So I think we can rely on you and other members of committees to advocate to the city of Las Cruces, the town of Mesilla, the county, to have further studies in this aspect too. We're only a recommending body, so we really need your help to stress the importance of lighting as well. So it's just so much I can do. I can't analyze, and I think that would be beyond my expertise too.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Wilcox again for the record. I appreciate the fact you brought up light pollution. The city of Las Cruces is known as a destination for a lot of people who enjoy our nighttime skies. And I appreciate the fact that that's going to be something that will also be recommended that we make sure that's not a problem in installing new lighting.
Well, Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, I personally think that safety should go above light pollution because I think deaths and injuries should be not, because you can't see the sky, should go above that. So, but I think that there is a place for that. I agree. But now with new LED lighting and other ways, you can minimize light pollution as well. But I think safety trumps it all. I'd much rather see sky lit up than a pedestrian killed. So it's a matter of trade-offs.
Okay, I guess I'll put Mr. Love on the spot a little bit too, because some of the projects that I'm familiar with lighting associated, like the University Avenue, we're going to put some lighting in some of the intersections, and the Main Street or US 70 extension from Solano to Elks area, especially the Elks Main Street intersection. I assume that you have some engineers that are specialized in the lighting when they look at these things. Would that be a fair statement?
That is correct.
So hopefully, as those projects go, we do have some improvements in some areas, and we don't have our city representative here to tell us if there are any plans, what they might be able to tell us. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, yes, please. Ashley Curry for the record. I am just kind of keeping, just as a matter of interest, first and foremost, I mentioned this at a previous committee meeting. Thank you so much for this report. I think this is very enlightening. And I hope that the partnering agencies, the city and the county and the town of Mesilla and NMDOT will look into this seriously, because I think it is very informative and as to where to go from here. And I realize that this is not an action plan, but this is a awakening to where crashes are happening. One of the questions that I had, I know this continues to come up with the lag on pedestrian crash data. Does the MPO kind of keep anecdotal until it's officially approved crash data as they happen?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, it's sporadic how we keep up with the crashes. And so we have in past, but we don't have from Doñana County. We do it from the city of Las Cruces. When I did the intersection study, I did detailed analysis of that too. But one of the problems is that, well, you're exactly right, Ms. Curry, that we've been fighting for each scale 1 year lag instead of 2 year lag. But even the national data is on 2 year lag too. So comparative reason. But I think we're keep on fighting, but as far as staff, there's only so much we do. So we're relying on the legislators to really come and fight on that too. And we hope Mr. Doodle may help us out too as well. So we do. The only thing is that I think that one thing we have is that changing police staff. And every year they change the person that is in charge of crashes for the city of Las Cruces. And so that's sort of hampering too. Some are very good, some are they're all very good, but some are better than others. And so it's it's not a constant contact, it's not one contact. And we have done it, and we'll get back to it in the future, but it's also like we don't get reports on a regular basis either. And it's all in paper format or PDFs, but they may be a portion of digitizing it too. I hope that answers your question, Ms.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. McAdams. I think what is concerning to me is there's room for interpretation within these crashes, and I think oftentimes the media does the interpreting for us, and those people may not be educated on fault. And I was a little dismayed to see the mayor at the city referring to the newspaper as his source for what happened in a crash and whose fault the crashes were. And if it's like, oh, pedestrian fault, pedestrian fault, pedestrian fault. And that's really an interpretation of a reporter. So I'm happy to hear that you're getting it directly from the police department, because I think if people are just simply referring to newspaper articles, I don't know that goes in the forward direction of not victim blaming. So it is a problem, and I see that potentially our active transportation coordinator for the city gets one eventually again, would be a good person for that. Or I didn't know if there was somebody at the MPO who keeps track of that in a better format than via the newspaper articles. Along those lines, I just wanted to ask you if there's been any, and I know this was a DOT project originally and it got passed to the city, but the Valley Drive improvements that were put in a couple years ago, has there been sort of pre and post data? I mean, have we seen a decrease in crashes along Valley Drive because of the improvements that were put in? Is anybody kind of keeping track of that?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, anecdotally, I've seen decrease. Maybe Mr. Love can address that too.
No, as was previously discussed, because of the lack of accident data, it'll be a couple years before we actually get accurate data to really see post and pre and post.
I think that would be amazing. I mean, at this point, how removed the pedestrians are from the lanes of traffic because of the buffers and because of the bike lanes. I would just imagine that there would be improvement along there. And then finally, my other question is in regards to your report and your research. If it's difficult to light an entire intersection, did you come across anything about the on-demand pedestrian crossings? I mean, not necessarily as big as the Hawk signal. I know the city's putting in one they mentioned the other day on Walnut at Capitol by Sierra Middle School. But did you see any research that talked about the pedestrian on-demand flashes that then make it safer for pedestrians to cross?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, I think that, and also Mr. Chair had talked about this too. Hawk signals cost at a minimum $50,000 and not exactly or more. But it's been proven that flashing signals that come on with pedestrian enter the crosswalk are as effective and definitely more cost effective than the flash. So there is, I'm not sure the jury is in it, but I think that's worth looking at. I think a lot of times that, oh no, we don't meet the warrants for the pedestrian warrants, the volume, but I don't think the flashing lights has really been considered. And I think that can be considered too. So I agree with you completely.
Yeah, I think a lot of other cities have those kinds of, it doesn't have to be a huge overhead Hawk signal, but it's just something to bring attention to a crosswalk that may not be well lit. And it may be in a neighborhood where they don't want huge amounts of overhead lighting, but it may be something that a pedestrian could push a button. I mean, I'm just thinking even, we talked about this before at other meetings on University Ave with the infrastructure that's going in, crossing McDowell to Zia Middle School. Is that something where there could be a pedestrian on-demand flasher put in? Again, not a Hawk signal, but just a smaller version so that students crossing, early in the mornings or later in the afternoons can kind of have some attention brought to that crossing. And so, I don't know, I just think that I just was interested to hear if you'd come across those in your studies of the effectiveness of that. So that's me done talking. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. We're on to committee and staff comments. City of Las Cruces is absent. Doña County, do you have any updates for us?
No.
Town of Mesilla.
Rod McGilvery for the record. We're still continuing our work on the La Llorona Trail extension. We're about 60% complete. We anticipate that project being done probably by the 1st of April. The only other comment I'd have is that I'd like to remind our member jurisdictions and everybody that New Mexico has a Night Sky Protection Act that we have to follow. So I'd suggest you take a look at that.
Okay, I was out at the La Llorona extension, and one thing I noticed, there was a gate completely across the trail close to the end. Is that just a temporary during construction, or what's the story with that gate?
There will be a fence that parallels the trail, and that gate is a vehicular gate to get through across the trail. It doesn't block the trail. The gate's parallel with the trail.
Okay, so it's just swung in the wrong place at the moment.
It swings 180.
Right, so it's just it's just not where it belongs because you're under construction.
If it's crossing the trail at this time, it's trying to tell you to stay off the trail because we're still working on it.
Right, yeah, because you have some sort of concrete works there. And okay, thank you. NMSU.
It's Jack Kirby for the record. No updates from NMSU.
Las Cruces Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just, again, it's a ways away, but I'll continue to remind you, April 29th is our family bike fiesta. We would love to have volunteers if anybody's interested in coming. It's a big event and we use lots of volunteers. And then that is preceding National Bike to School Week, which is the first week of May. So if any of you would be interested in, I think we're going to do a training ahead of that just to how to lead a bike train. And if any of you are interested in coming out and volunteering, we would really love some extra help at some of we've got 25 schools and just a few of us to be at all of them. So we'd love to get people trained up. If anybody's retiring soon and has extra time on their hands. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. NMDOT.
Harold Love, NMDOT, got a couple of project updates. Currently ongoing is the US 70 roadway rehab project. The project is from I-10, US 70, all the way to US 70 in Oregon. Basically pavement preservation, microsurfacing, and mill and fill. And I believe the contractor is starting on the east end at NASA and Oregon, and coming into town with the work. And so watch out for the traffic control. There'll be detours and lane drops and flagging operations, and also nighttime work. The other project is on Stern Drive, doing some erosion control on Stern Drive, and there'll be flagging operations going on there. And that's all I have.
Okay. On the,
Regarding that, about the DOT update out near NASA Road on 70, I guess that's on the access road. We had a quite vigorous debate about whether there's going to be sharrows or a dedicated bike lane. I think there's a dedicated bike lane now.
Yes.
So is that going to go to sharrows, or are you going to maintain the dedicated bike lane?
I believe we had made a determination a while back during the design that it was going to be a dedicated bike lane all the way through.
Okay, great. I think the consensus was that we preferred that. So thank you for that update.
okay, and wouldn't be appropriate without asking you about the I-25 capacity study.
Yes.
We know we have 2 public meetings coming up tomorrow and Thursday.
Yes.
One is a virtual meeting on tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
And Thursday, an in-person meeting at Doniana School,
Yes,
also at 6.
at 6. Finally. Yes.
Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Ray. I have a question for Mr. Love. We had an inquiry about the University Avenue multimodal project, about when construction on the ground is going to be starting. Can you give any information about that?
I believe the project's supposed to be let later on this year, but construction probably won't start till next year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. MPO staff update.
Dominic Loya for MPO staff, Mr. Chair. So right now, as we just had one call for projects, there is an ongoing call for projects right now for the Transportation Project Fund. This is all state money. The date for the deadline will be March 31st. So please have the projects into us by then. Again, that is for, and it's completely state money for the Transportation Project Fund.
Have you heard of any applications that are coming your way yet?
Mr. Chair, not at this time. We don't have any information.
Committee member updates. Any committee members want to say anything? I don't think you're not on mic.
The multi-use trail in La Llorona is looking great. It looks like it's about 90% complete. It's connecting kind of Norte multi-use trail with the La Llorona multi-use trail. So that's looking great. So kudos to that. Is that going to have the 3 posts to prevent other access aside from, you can have a jogger or a walker or a bicyclist, but it will prevent access from other vehicles? Are they going to be like the 3 posts?
Rod McGilvery for the record, Town of Mesilla. The only place that's going to have any bollards is at the river levee.
Okay.
The rest of the trail has a fence, a cable system fence that runs parallel with the trail to keep the vehicles off.
Okay. I have one last question, and it sort of ends in dirt now. Is there going to be an ADA-approved access where it doesn't end in dirt that will make it continuous so it connects with the actual road and that pedestrian crossway on the Calle del Norte?
I'm unfamiliar with which side of the trail you're asking. Can you re-ask your question,
It's
please?
the trail that comes up from the river, and it's on an incline, and it's
Near
coming
the
up where the
crosswalk.
berm is, where it's owned by the Department of Interior, or EBID, where there's a dirt road access.
Yes, to answer your question, that, you're talking about the River Levee Road. So there will be asphalt across the River Levee Road
Yeah, exactly.
that ties to the approach on the other side of the River Levee, the existing approach on that.
Okay, so there will be connectivity?
It's asphalt from the La Llorona trailhead to the Calle del Norte trailhead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Right now, there's a gap there. There's also a gap right at the end of the La Llorona Trail and where the new construction, but it's under construction, so of course, there's a gap.
Just the, similar to that on the north side, the great bike path, multi-use trail on Calle del Norte, where it flips over to the north side, it dead ends in dirt right before you get into Mesilla. And there's no connectivity there. Will there be connectivity there?
That's another phase.
Another phase, okay, great. Thank you for that.
So while we're talking about that trail, I guess my only other comment while going there today is we came out of one of the side streets, I don't remember the exact side street, right about the middle. Okay. And in order to get onto the trail, we had to go over the big curb because there's no curb cuts there. So curb cuts would have been very helpful.
Okay.
This is Jim Wilcox for the record. You said there'd be another phase. Do you have a timeline for that?
The next TPF, we're putting an application together to cross the Mesilla lateral. And it narrows down at that point. The trail ends, but it's going to basically end up on the other side of the Mesilla lateral, and it'll end up in dirt again. Because there's just no way to get to Avenida de Mesilla without moving the road over.
So I've only been out there a couple times. My understanding is it kind of just drops off from the concrete to dirt. Is that correct?
Right now it does. It has a concrete taper ramp.
There's a taper ramp on there now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
Okay. See no other member comment. We move on to public comment. See no request for public comment. We move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Ashley Curry, I propose a motion to adjourn.
Jess Waller, second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn without objection. We're adjourned. Thank you.